After remaining silent for 3 decades, Sally Field is now speaking out about the events that transpired on the set of Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993. During filming of a divorce scene, Robin Williams abruptly halted the shoot and separated from Field. His subsequent actions stunned the entire crew, forcing the director to reschedule the entire production. Curious about what happened, the truth about that day changes everything you thought you knew about Sally Field. She was born on November 6, 1946 in Pasadena, California, to working actress Margaret Field and Army officer and pharmacist Richard Field. On the outside, it appeared like a perfect Hollywood beginning. However, when Sally was only 4 years old, Sally's parents' divorce in 1950 shattered the illusion that their family was perfect. The years that followed were not glamorous, but rather chaotic, uncertain, and painful. Her mother had a hard time keeping the family together, and Hollywood wasn't exactly a safe haven for single moms in the early 1950s. Sally and her older brother Richard lived in a home where love and chaos clashed constantly. Margaret's marriage to actor and stuntman Jock Mahoney on January 21, 1952, took an unexpected turn. Sally, who was 5 years old at the time, was tall, handsome, and full of energy, just like a movie hero. Divorce was still uncommon back then, which made Sally feel different. The outside world might have seen movie lights, but at home there was fear, loneliness, and a desire for something stable. Off-screen, he appeared enchanting to many, but beneath his charming exterior lurked a far darker menace. In her 2018 memoir, Sally would disclose the horrific truth about Jock Mahoney's sexual abuse of her over many years. Mahoney would lure her to his room, manipulate her, inject her with drugs, and leave her with indelible scars. As a child, she struggled to make sense of the conflicting emotions of fear and love. The abuse ended when she turned 14, but the pain lingered. She kept quiet about it, not telling anyone, not even her mother, until decades later. What hurt more than anything was the conflicting emotions he induced. Sally described feeling powerful and helpless at the same time, a result of his manipulation. Feeling like she had some control over what was happening, even though she didn't, that confusion lingered into adulthood, manifesting in her relationships, self-esteem, and perspective on love. For years, she carried that silence like a burden. However, everything changed in 2011 when Sally's mother was dying of cancer. In that peaceful moment, while preparing dinner, she revealed. In the end, after more than half a century of hiding the truth, Sally finally found solace in her mother's words. "You won't be alone in this anymore." Despite her illness and fragility, her mother listened and provided the solace Sally had been seeking her entire life. Acting in junior high, she found the drama department, and it saved her. On stage, she wasn't Sally Field, but someone else, with a different story and different pain. At 13 years old, she had a moment when the character took over, and it was absolutely liberating. It gave her purpose. She wasn't trying to flaunt it, but rather to survive, and acting gave her an outlet for the things she couldn't speak aloud. Birmingham High School became like a second home to her. Years later, the school would honor her by naming its drama department after her. But back then, it was just a place where she could breathe. On the outside, she appeared. For Sally, like for all teenage girls, cheerleading was more than just a role. It was a means of camouflage, allowing her to blend in with her peers while she smiled, danced, and shouted, "School chants!" On the outside, she appeared happy, but beneath the surface, the reality was far darker. Featured notable figures such as Michael Millen, Michael Oites, and Cindy Williams, but no one understood Sally's true struggles. At the age of 17, Sally Field endured abuse, fear, and silence while attempting to overcome her story. Acting and cheerleading provided her with a voice and a mask, respectively, which she utilized to persevere. After finishing high school, Sally's world came crashing down around her. She discovered she was pregnant, but there was no one she could turn to for help because abortion was illegal in the U.S. Not even her mother would discuss it, but a doctor who was friends with her family offered to help her get an illegal abortion in Tijuana, Mexico. Sally rode in the back seat. Despite her fear, they eventually arrived at a dilapidated street where the doctor parked and gave her a wad of cash. He didn't accompany her. Instead, he pointed 3 blocks away, instructed her to turn in the wad and return immediately. The building didn't appear to be a clinic, but she went inside anyhow. What she got was a few puffs of ether, not a dose that would make her feel numb in her limbs and her mind fuzzy, but she would still be awake and aware of everything going on around her. Things took a turn for the worse when the procedure started, and Sally sensed that something wasn't right. The technician, who she didn't know, was supposed to be helping her, but instead, she started touching her inappropriately. Sally could feel that she was being molested, but she was paralyzed with pain and humiliation. The building staff hurried her out as if they were covering up a crime, but her body and mind were in a state of disarray. The ether had dulled her senses but not her consciousness. She fought to free herself, but it took all she had to move her hand to do so. In addition to the physical pain, she described the experience as beyond hideous and life-altering, because it transformed her in more ways than one. No one spoke about the procedure, the assault, or the trauma she had endured, and she was expected to put it all behind her. Sally Field's life took a dramatic turn in 1965 when, at the tender age of 19, she won the lead role in Gig at a summer workshop at Columbia Studios. The role was a lifelong ambition of hers, and she became an overnight sensation. However, there was a dark side to the fame that came with the role. The film was lighthearted and sunny, depicting adolescent life on California beaches, but it also contained a hidden cost. The show was abruptly canceled after only 1 season. Summer reruns turned it into a cult favorite, but by then, the damage had been done. Sally had become known as Jigget in the public eye, and no one in Hollywood wanted her for anything else. Her success had become a prison, as casting directors only saw the vivacious team, not the actress beneath. Despite the show's initial ratings failure, its lasting impact. She was cast in a limited role due to her charisma, energy, and impeccable comedic timing, but producers were unsure if she could handle a more serious role. Then, her stepfather warned her that she might never be able to say no to ABC's offer of a more ridiculous series about a 90-pound nun who could fly thanks to her hat. Still, Sally refused. From 1967 to 1970, The Flying Nun aired for 82 episodes. The kids loved it, but Sally hated it. She felt humiliated, physically drained, and depressed. She developed bulimia. She knew this role, like Gig's, would bring her even more shame and humiliation. Just as the show brought her fame, it also closed more doors than it opened. Hollywood insisted on viewing her as the same sweet, innocent girl with a smile, no matter how much she tried to break free. In 1967, she made her big screen debut in The Way West, a western packed with, featuring Kirk Douglas, Robert Mitchum, Richard Widmark, and Sally as Mercy McB, a girl coming to terms with her sexuality on a wagon train. The role was daring and different from her work on television, but the film bombed. Critics panned it, audiences didn't care, and neither her adult viewers nor her teenage admirers stuck with her. Hollywood, she found herself in a strange position. She was famous enough from TV to be taken seriously, but not famous enough from movies to break through. She didn't appear in another film for nearly a decade. In the meantime, her personal life was in flux. She married Steve Craig in 1968, and the couple had 2 sons, Peter and Eli. They divorced 7 years later, but she continued working, determined to stay. She bravely joined the actor's studio and studied under Lee Strasberg, who changed everything. He pushed her to dig deeper, stop pretending, and find what she really wanted, and every role she took seemed like a rerun of Gig or The Flying Nun. Sally was determined to escape, but she was drowning in safe, visible roles. At the age of 21, Sally Field found herself cast in The Girl with Something Extra, a sitcom about a newlywed woman with ESP. The concept was silly, but the show only ran for 22 episodes, so her hope quickly faded. Gradually, her confidence returned, and she finally began to feel like an actress again, not a product. Unfortunately, Hollywood failed to catch up. Married to Steve Craig in 1968, they had 2 sons, Peter and Eli, by 1972. On the outside, she seemed to be living the dream, a rising TV star, a dedicated wife, and a young mother. However, something was breaking beneath her perfect image. She had played the innocent, sweet girl on screen for years, but off-screen, she felt trapped in a life she hadn't truly chosen. By 1975, she had reached her breaking point. Her marriage abruptly ended after 7 years, leaving her to raise 2 children alone in Los Angeles. The change was terrifying, but it also gave her the freedom to discover her true identity and pursue her dream of becoming an actress. In the same year, she shocked everyone by enrolling in a method acting workshop and delving headfirst into roles that Sally's 1976 film Stay Hungry, in which she portrayed Mary Tate, a carefree party girl who lived fast and loved freely, was more than a film. It was a rebellion, a wild bodybuilding story full of strange characters and Jim Sweat. The film scared her because she no longer wanted to be America's sweetheart. She wanted to be real, raw, and respected. In Stay Hungry, she co-starred with Jeff Bridges and a young, unknown bodybuilder named Arnold Schwarzenegger. The film was chaotic, noisy, and totally unlike anything she had done before. However, that year, she landed a role that would shatter her previous reputation completely. In Sybil, a made-for-TV movie, Sally played a woman with. She studied real-life cases, collaborated with doctors, and pushed herself to her limits. The reaction was explosive when Sybil aired in November 1976, with over 20 million people watching. Critics were stunned, and audiences were shaken. Sally had multiple personality disorder, which was dark, intense, and brutally difficult. When Sally Field landed the role in Smokey and the Bandit in 1977, she wasn't merely seeking a role. She was seeking the respect that Hollywood saw in her. Little did they know, the girl they thought had vanished in her place was actually a woman capable of tackling one of the most intricate roles in television history. Her performance not only earned her an Emmy, but also the recognition she had been seeking for years. She was known as the vivacious girl from animated comedies, like Gidget and The Flying Nun. Despite her recent critical triumph in Sybil, she faced skepticism from some who didn't believe she could make it as an actress. However, she was certain of one thing: Burt Reynolds was the world's biggest movie star. If he thought she was beautiful and talented, others would start to believe it too. Their initial encounter was staged like a date. Reynolds was upfront about his interest in Sally Field, but she saw more than just a romance. She saw an opportunity. The two became inseparable within days, and Hollywood took notice. The Bandit was a financial smash, earning over $126 million at the box office and over $600 million today. Sally Field had finally arrived, but her bold move had unintended consequences. Their 5-year romance, which began in 1977 and ended in the early 1980s, gave the impression of being a glamorous power couple on the outside. However, behind the scenes, Field described it as a painful roller coaster of emotions, including love, confusion, and control. Reynolds, she said, had charming moments, but he was also jealous and demanding. When she was offered the lead role in Norma Ray, Reynolds warned her, "No lady of mine is going to play a wow." Field said she felt compelled to wear body makeup because she was afraid Reynolds would grab her face and demand to know who she was talking to if she did. Reynolds also dictated her clothing choices and even made her wear makeup if he thought her skin looked too pale. In order to make things work, she had to erase parts of herself. Reynolds had trouble getting along with her children, so Field often had to leave them with their mother. Despite the pain, she acknowledged that there was real love. However, the price was high. Her confidence took a hit, her freedom shrank, and she felt trapped, like a version of herself was watching everything unfold. Reynolds' addiction consumed him, and he refused to seek treatment for his chronic pain. Instead, he relied on Field, who became his nurse, discreetly giving him pills whenever he nodded or gave her a look. He would take them all, sometimes 2 at a time, and he would blame his jaw condition (TMJ) for his pain. Reynolds reportedly used his fame to exert control over everyone in his life, including her, even though he never shouted or hit anyone. The media started speculating about his AIDS diagnosis in the early 1980s, but he was actually addicted to painkillers and trying to hide his addiction. He finally checked into rehab in 2009, long after their relationship had ended, but by then, the damage had already been done. Controlled by charisma, fame, and oblivion, Field was already scarred from her childhood abuse at the hands of her stepfather, Jock Mahoney. She buried the pain for a long time, but it molded her. In Reynolds, she saw a man who matched her description: magnetic, powerful, and emotionally distant. Recurring theme: she wasn't seeking love so much as healing. "I was trying to make it work this time," she confessed, but she was unable. Reynolds, who died in 2018 at the age of 82, brought up old hurts that she had no idea how to heal. Despite this, she stayed for years, attempting to mend something that was never her responsibility. Was preparing to publish her memoir, in which she had revealed every detail of her life. However, she hoped that he would never read it because she didn't want to publicly hurt him. Reynolds had referred to her as the love of her life, and she believed him. Despite the pain she had endured, she still had a soft spot for him. In 1979, Field took center stage in Norma Ray, a role that would alter the course of her career. In the film, she portrayed Crystal Lee Sutton, a mill worker in the South who assisted in the unionization of her factory. For the part, Field had done extensive research with real workers in Alabama, learning about their hardships and daily lives. Director Martin Ritt pushed Field hard, but she ultimately succeeded. Standing on a table with a sign that read, "Union" was filmed in one take and it worked. Norma Ray delivered the most iconic moment of the film. People believed her, and the movie had an impact nationwide. In 1980, at the 52nd Academy Awards, Field went on stage, stunned, to accept an Oscar. She was up against legends like Jane Fonda, B. Midler, and more. Her speech was awkward, honest, and emotive. "I've never had a traditional job, and having your respect is more important to me than anything else," she stated. Her move from sitcom star to serious actress was complete at that moment, but she wasn't finished yet. A year later, she co-starred with Paul Newman in Absence of Malice, in which she played a journalist entangled in an ethical storm, and critics took notice once again. Places in the Heart, released in 1984, found Field playing a widowed mother battling to preserve her Texas farm during the Great Depression. Her performance was subdued, unfiltered, and unforgettable, demonstrating that she was unafraid of complex roles. The film was a smash hit, solidifying her place in Hollywood. Tears streaming down her face, she won her second Oscar in 1985. Her speech became famous for a different reason, as she shouted, "You like me right now? Do you like me?" The line has been misquoted and parroted ever since, but it was genuine. In that one emotional scene, a church congregation sang Blessed Assurance. It was a raw and unscripted moment of emotion from a character who had lived her entire life attempting to be taken seriously. Field didn't prepare for it, but it came out of nowhere and stuck. In 1993, during the filming of Mrs. Doubtfire, a courtroom divorce sequence, Sally Field had just entered her trailer when she received contacted a doctor who informed her that her father, who had endured multiple massive strokes in the past, had recently suffered yet another one. The doctor then asked if she wanted to place her father on life support, but Sally knew the answer and instead requested that the doctor lean down and whisper something to her father. With that, Sally bid her father farewell and returned to the set, remaining silent. "Don't cry or make a scene, just keep going. I, on the other hand, refrained from doing either," she later explained. "I came on the set trying with all my might to act." It's ironic that she was filming a scene about emotional breakdowns while keeping herself together in real life. Sally's silence was palpable the moment she stepped onto the set, and he took note. "Are you okay?" he asked, gently pulling her aside. At first, she tried to brush it off, but she couldn't lie to him. "My father just died," she whispered, and Robin didn't even bother to listen. Hesitated before saying, "Oh my God, we need to get you out of here right now." There was no discussion, no production noise, just concern. Robin approached director Chris Columbus, who did more than ask. He demanded a rescheduling of the filming schedule so Sally could leave, and they made it happen. The remaining scenes were shot that day without her. Sally contacted her brother and began the grieving process. That moment had nothing to do with fame or deadlines. It had everything to do with humanity. It had come from a man whom most people knew as the overbearing comedian on screen. Years later, Sally shared the story, not for attention's sake, but because people never saw the sensitive and intuitive side of Robin. She claimed he could feel,